So libertarians and conservatives really hate the administrative state. The administrative state are these expert institutions that will no longer have power because Scott has overturned the Chevron case. So that means that instead of the expert institutions being capable of dictating what is good, what isn't good. For instance, how much of a certain chemical is okay and not harmful in water, and how much of it is harmful, and how that impacts rules and regulations against companies. Instead of experts doing that, it's going to be the courts. It's going to be non-experts, because the thing about law is that law can have various fields. So you question how many Scottish justices actually took environmental law, environmental protections, and how many of them actually did deep dived. Like me, I have a background in legal jurisprudence, but I wouldn't say that I'm very specialist in, say, personal injury. Really, I really don't care about personal injury. I know it enough. I've worked on cases in the past. However, I really don't care for it. So I'm not an expert in it at all. And that's the thing. These, just because they went to law school doesn't mean they're smart in everything. But rather the purpose is to clog up the system with so many cases that they're not held accountable. Corporations are not held accountable to the extent where experts who actually know what they're talking about are capable of shutting them down. But no, judiciaries, justices who don't actually know are much more capable of being convinced that something that would be bad under the experts for water wouldn't be bad under the courts. Now, this taste for the administrative state, for these experts institutions, has some validity, but we share a different conclusion of what should happen. Libertarians and conservatives want to eliminate the administrative state, so expert opinion in regards to making laws. And reasoning is because obviously the administrative state falls under the executive. And the reality is that because what Congress does is they do bare minimum. They like do a say what kind of laws they want, but they don't actually do it in detail. They give that to the administrative state, to the certain institution, expert institution, in order for them to create those rules and regulations for that law, to expand it and make it much more expansive. Now the problem is that these people in the administrative state are not voted in by the people. In our constitutional framework positions that it is the people that we vote in who have lawmaking power. So the fact that the administrative state has a type of lawmaking power in writing these laws, it means that it is misaligned to our constitutional intentions. And that's fair. However, if Congress cannot even do the bare minimum laws, which they should be doing, to give over to the administrative state, then how can we expect them to make detailed laws that are capable without that expertise? Because they don't have that expertise. Look, we have Marjorie Taylor Greene. Her expertise is nothing. The Bobart girl, nothing. Ron DeSantis, nothing. So that's only going to give more work to people who don't actually want to do the work, which means that we're never going to have regulatory protections. There's when you're working and it's hot and you have no fan. These are the regulations, that these are kind of things that expert opinions would be like, hey, you need to have these things in order for it to be safe. Do you think Congress, do you think court are going to give a fuck whether you have no fan when it's super hot? No. They're not going to think that ahead. They're not going to think at all about that, because they're over there in their own offices with AC. They don't give a shit about you, a minimum wage worker. No. So in a way, it has validity because there is that concern. But the concern in not having expert opinion on regulations that these Congress people and the courts don't have expertise in is that there's going to be negligence. There's going to be very little oversight into the protections of the people, and that's going to result in a loss of life. That's going to be result in, like, aviation. Do you think courts should dictate what regulations should be in aviation? The judges, who is paying them? Corporations. If Boeing is paying the courts to not regulate aviation, do you think aviation will be regulated? contrary to the benefit of Boeing. No. Congress, the same thing. I do have my own judgments of the administrative state. I do think they have to be held much more accountable by the people, because obviously they're appointed by the executive, which really means that they have loyalty to the executive. Betsy DeVos was in the Department of Education. That's the administrative state, and obviously she was very faithful to her president, Donald Trump, when she was in it. So I do have my own reservations about holding the administrative state much more accountable to the people, but I do think they're extremely important. They're experts. The only thing is that Congress does not have the rules and regulations required in order to have them be much more effective and much more accountable. Right now, we have all these different institutions of experts fighting against each other for funding. And that's how the government, particularly the executive of who put them inside, has so much leverage over what policies are pushed and how they're pushed. For instance, that's Joe Biden, his initial student cancellation was rejected because he had no power. Why did he have no power? Because the rules and regulations that were presented, that were created by Congress and then the administrative state, the Department of Education, they didn't give him that power. Why? Because they didn't want to give him that power. That they didn't intend to give him that power. So the administrative state can make policy based on self preservation, really, and the agenda of that administration which put them forward, and that's problematic. So there is concerns with the administrative state, but removing expert opinion from law that is about these distinct fields that Congress nor the judges have expertise in it is dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. And at the root, it is libertarianism. It is Citizens United, or being robbed of our constitutional system, of our constitutional social contract by the libertarians. They're positioning corporations, corporate greed, maximum profit above that of safety nets. In order for there to be maximum profit, there should be a dissolvement of safety nets. That includes regulations against companies. That includes regulating how much of stuff can be thrown into the water. Because fixing that would mean that these companies would have to pay more to make sure that we're safe. They don't want to do that. So they want to clog up the system so that at least a good amount of them can get away. Because, I mean, taking things to court takes a long time. It takes a long time. So they'll be still doing all of that stuff as they're waiting for litigation. And then there's no experts, right? So they have to convince a judiciary that is already, the conservative ones have already been dreaming of removing the administrative state, removing regulations from corporations. So this is their wildest dream, the libertarian dream, removal of expert opinion. Without experts, then you can do whatever you want, and you don't have to protect anyone, because protecting people will cost money.